Hey, what's up, you guys? Bloody Jacob here to finally give you my thoughts on Three from Hell, the sequel to House of a Thousand Corpses, as well as The Devil's Rejects.
Jacob here, meeting my icon, Catherine Isabel here. Yeah.
Yep, this is once again directed and written by Rob Zombie, starring Sherry Moon Zombie as well as Bill Moseley, and unfortunately the final appearance of horror icon Sid Haig as Captain Spaulding. And yeah, we've all been waiting for the sequel for quite some time now, ever since the kind of surprise announcement of it a while back. It came out quite a while ago. It played in some select theaters for a bit in October, or September, excuse me, and again in October for a day, I think it was. Unfortunately, the theater nearest to me wasn't really doing that with Fathom, so that kind of sucked. But I was finally able to see it when it came out, on physical and digital and everything like that. I do plan buying it at some point. Now I liked both House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects. I think Rob Zombie is actually very unique and, at times good filmmaker. I think he definitely has his stamp and style about him. He's one of those people that when you're watching one of his movies. I don't think he's had a fantastic movie yet necessarily, even though I even have liked his Halloween films as well. I think there's a great movie in him, but I haven't seen one I absolutely love yet. Although with time I have grown even more fond of both House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects. I'm definitely need to rewatch those. I have them both on Blu-ray, actually. Excuse me. I, like everyone, is very curious and sort of nervous about how they're going to follow up the ending to Devil's Rejects, since all the lead characters were, practically shot to hell, and that great final shot in the second film. And how they explain it here is, I don't know, they really don't. They basically make it out of one out of however many chances that they just miraculously survived, being gunned down the way they were, and then they're incarcerated for a while. And then, of course, you have them eventually escaping, or at least, most of them. And let's just talk about that right away. Sid Haig. Sid Haig, of course, legend of the genre. He's been acting for, decades, not just horror movies either. I guarantee you guys, go into his filmography. Excuse that massive Facebook notification sound. Apologies for that, sorry. But yeah, go into his filmography, and I guarantee you will find movies you hadn't heard of, but you wished you'd heard of. You'll see that he had a role in some older classic films that you really didn't realize. The guy goes all the way back, just decades. But of course, he had gained a even greater fame with his role in House of a Thousand Corpses and onward, and it really became part of the heart of the horror community. I unfortunately did not have a chance to meet him yet before his passing. He did attend the Days of the Dead conventions, actually, fairly often from what I've seen. I always thought, hey, I'll probably, go to a con that he's at eventually, but unfortunately it's not going to happen. I remember waking up in the morning, knowing he was in poor health for a while, but I remember waking up in the morning and seeing his wife's post on his Instagram explaining everything, and yeah, it hit both me and my fiance pretty rough. So obviously, Rob Zombie, being at least someone in touch with him, knew that the kind of condition he was in. Yet he wanted to give him some kind of role in Three from Hell, because Spalding was such a pivotal point of the other two films, and really, kind of like the face of the series, I think. But Bill Moseley, Otis, he takes on a lot of the action as well, but I feel like Spalding was always the character that people would have an image of in their heads when they think of these movies. So he has a limited role in this. They really couldn't do much about that. You have to feel lucky that we got to see Sid Haig play the character at least one more time, even for a couple minutes. Basically get to sit down, sort of go back and forth with one of the workers at the prison, and sort of go on one last mad rant and everything. But Sid Haig, he does well in the scene or so he's in. Kudos to him for channeling that type of energy, to portray his character one final time. But of course, it does hurt the film that Captain Spaulding isn't in it much. Would have elevated even more if Spaulding again was on the one on the road with them, which was originally what it was going to be. But yeah, rest in peace, Sid Haig. It just seems like we get more and more deaths over the years who mean a great deal to us, and it's hard to actually go into detail about what that actually has done to this community. But greatest condolences to his wife and everyone who actually had known him. He seemed like a very, very nice, kind, and thoughtful, humorous man. Based on everyone that I've seen talk about meeting him, that they had the chance to over the years. The rest of the movie, they do bring Richard Brake into it, who was by far the highlight of Rob Zombie's 31 as Doomhead. They bring him into this as Foxworth, Foxy, Winslow, the Midnight Werewolf, right? Richard Brake was also at one point the Night King in Game of Thrones before they changed that for whatever reason. I do really like Richard Brake, and again, the cast does a pretty fine job here. Again, I would have loved Sid Haig to have worked out somehow, but Richard Brake I thought was a good fit for this world as well. They probably could have even had him in it, even just because he feels like he does, mesh with the style, the tone, or the style of the film and the characters. So I thought he actually worked as an addition. And Sheri Moon Zombie, this is probably her best performance of the series, I think. She basically plays like a somehow more grounded, yet more directly violent version of a typical Harley Quinn, which I'm sure, is what it was partially, inspired by, whether Rob Zombie would say that or not. She's kind of unhinged in that, Harley Quinn sort of way. And again, Bill Moseley does a very fine job as Otis. He has the same, attitude and, similar drive to what he had in the first two films, but he's definitely older, a little bit more worn down, a little bit more just, tired of all the shit in the world. But, he still plays it, just as well when it comes down to it. And you had Emilio Rivera, playing sort of our main antagonist of it, trying to hunt the family down. He's fine. Emilio Rivera is a very good, capable actor, but I don't know, there's really not a lot to his character. His character doesn't actually end up doing that much. You also have Danny Trejo in a brief appearance being brought back from his role in the early film. It's cool to see him, but it doesn't really amount to much again. Dee Wallace, you might not even notice her. She's one of the guards at the prison. She kind of ends up having a weird dynamic with with a baby. But yeah, overall, the movie I liked. It's definitely more like Devil's Rejects than House of a Thousand Corpses. I do think House of a Thousand Corpses is probably the most distinguished and sort of a standout film of the series. Devil's Rejects I still liked a lot, but like Devil's Rejects, I think 3 from Hell feels a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more like a safe action with some horror, sort of film. It's kind of like that. But the characters, you enjoy. The actors, again, have good chemistry with each other. Their banter is probably the best part of it. Minus, you actually could have watched a whole road trip with, Otis and Foxy. I think that would have, they could have had their own movie of that. Or even like a short of them just going out for something, or something along those lines. But there's one part of their humor where they get into, wanting to do like movies and stuff like that. I think I'm talking about a dog, and I don't know, it's too far. They're fucked up people, but it's not really funny. It doesn't really. I don't see why that would leave a enjoyable taste in an audience's mouth, but it is what it is with that. But luckily, they didn't really focus on it too long. But it's just okay. Let's move on. The film is fairly violent. Again, it's not really. There's really not much in the way of horror in this. Again, it's more action with kind of a darker, almost verging on horror edge at times, if anything. But it is still fairly violent. There's still some brutal kills, a couple, fairly violent deaths. But I won't say there's any particularly memorable death scene besides, towards the end, I guess. But it kind of is what it is with that too. You also have the actor who played the Nazi, the little Nazi in 31 again, I believe. I don't have his name here, but I wanted to see him pop up again in a Rob Zombie movie. So overall, this wasn't bad. I think it's definitely I don't know if I want to say the worst because it wasn't bad, but I think it's the least memorable of the 3 films. I would like another one. But, again, I think these characters are fun to follow around. But the film did have some pacing issues as well, and that's probably in part due to Rob Zombie having to rewrite it due to what's unfortunately going on with Sid Haig. But nonetheless, there's some pacing issues with it. They're holding this group of people hostage at a house at one point. It feels like it drags on too long there. Then all of a sudden they're in Mexico pretty quickly. So I don't know, it felt like there's stuff missing in both, there's something in between, I don't know. And it feels like it lingers a bit too long, and it feels a bit directionless of what they're actually trying to tell in this movie too. Overall, still not a bad time. I'd give it probably between like a 75-77%, a solid C, somewhere in there. Let me know you guys thought about 3 from Hell, or as a rank with the other 2 for you. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, like, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.